Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Nina Williams in Depth. I'm your host, A Friendly Tree, and today I want to talk about Nina's iconic move, Bad Habit. Now I can't say this name without thinking of the Offspring song, so just realise I'm going to have that playing in my head the whole time that I'm doing this. As always, before we do anything, let's make sure the settings are all as we want. So to start off with, I'm going to go with that, remove the health gauge, no counter. Good. Alright, Bad Habit. Well, where is it? The input is forward, forward 3, so it's going to be near the end of the move list. There we go, move number 74. So forward, forward 3, that's double forward input into the left kick. Why is it called Bad Habit? I'm assuming it's because it's the move where she kicks the character in the nuts. So, or if it's a male character, she kicks the character in the crotch. On counter hit, it gives that crumple stun as well. I know a lot of people when they first start playing the game, this is one of the moves that is quite memorable for them when they think of the character. So that's why I said it's an iconic move. Anyway, let's go into the properties. So we can see here on normal hit it's +8, does 24 damage, and it says start up 15 frames. Look, of course, because it's a forward input, it means the fastest we're actually going to get this move to come out is 16 frames. So it's a 16 frame input, +8 on hit, 24 damage. Now unfortunately on block it is -14, which means that it's kind of risky for what it is. But as you saw before with the stun, it's a counter hit launcher. So it's risky being -14, but you can get a pretty cool reward and you can do some pretty cool looking combos off it too. Why am I doing that again? Yeah. Yeah, so you get some pretty cool combos off it, and it's decent range as well. So if we look at the range here, we go to about range 2.8, and it's going to look, of course, because it's a forward input, you can delay the input. So you can extend the range of this move quite a lot. So it's quite good as an approaching tool for that reason. And you can see it's got pretty good range there too, as in the hitbox on it is quite far forward. It's right up to her foot. So it's whether you're close or not, it pushes them back quite a bit. If we do set the AI to guard all quickly, you'll see if we hit, or if we block it there, it's about range 1.9. If we do it there, it's 2.1. So depending on where you hit it, the spacing is actually different. And I believe that's the same on when you actually hit the move. So if we do it up close, we're about 2.3 to 2.4. If we do it far away, 2.5 to 2.6. So it's one of those moves, it doesn't have set spacing on it. It depends on where you hit it. So think of it like Paul's Dead Fist in that regard. It's very similar actually. Anyway, onward. Let's go to tracking. So unfortunately, this move doesn't have these tracking. So there's a demonstration. We can see here that regardless of the frames, really, it's very linear. So you're not going to be using this against an opponent that's stepping a lot, or you're dangerous if you. It's risky if you do. But other properties it has. So it is an OTG, and you can hit the opponent on the ground. If we go not set, you can see in a multitude of positions. It hits OTG very consistently. And we'll put it on the ground with this and just demonstrate. So we'll see in this position. So you can see it doesn't really matter what position they're in on the ground. This is going to consistently hit them on the ground, so that's really good to know. Especially as you saw before, it's a counter hit launcher, so if they try and get up to the button, you can also counter hit them. Okay, what other properties do we need to talk about? It gives good push for wall carry. So, for example, oh yikes, you can do this as an enter. Unfortunately though, it's kind of irrelevant because that does the same damage. And if you look at the frame advantage, 16 plus 9, there it says. 16 plus 9. So it's kind of trumped by the forward 1 plus 2, the real advantage being that it hits on the ground, which obviously doesn't affect the combo. But with that in mind, it means that you can use it in a lot of setups, like that, or even things like that, if you got it right, so the proper spike, which it didn't, but you get the idea. It actually got a buff earlier in Tekken 7, I think it was in Season 2, when it used to do 1 less point of damage. So instead of 24 damage, it did 23 damage, which meant it was very irrelevant for combos because Blonde Bomb did more damage. Now it's equal damage in equal situation. So it's kind of up to you how you want to use it there. Okay, we've gone on to counter hit properties, we've gone on to juggle properties. It also can cause a wall break, just like forward 1 plus 2 can. We talked about how linear it is, we talked about the range and the fact that you can delay it with a dash. That can also be good for confirming and figuring out if someone's going to press a button. So you can kind of use it as a keep out tool in that way. Last little property I'm going to talk about is just the unique thing with Brian, which those of you who have watched my obscure tech videos will probably already be aware of. So it doesn't really affect much. It's just a cool little legacy trait, I guess. So Brian, being the sadistic fella that he is, if you hit him with forward 3, it's the same as always. If you hit him with a counter hit, he laughs, and if you look at the total damage on my screen, so the total damage on the left side, it'll go 28 down to 27, because he actually laughs and he recovers 1 health after it. So I think that's just a funny little legacy thing that they've kept in the game. Like, it doesn't really affect anything, it's just a little trait that people can keep in mind. Okay, anyway, I think that's everything we need to do with the introduction and the properties of the move, so let's go into the application. So, how do we use Bad Habit or forward 3? It's kind of up to you. I mean, I think the greatest strength of this move is the fact that it hits OTG. So most of the situations I want to talk about are going to be OTG, but before we go into that, let's think about spacing wise. So I mentioned before that it doesn't auto space afterwards, so depending on where you hit will actually determine different spacing. So you're not always going to end up the same spacing all the time. And I think that's important to establish because it establishes that situation with the opponent where they're unconfident if they're going to punish it or not for a lot of characters. So kind of like Paul's Death Fist. When I said before, it's very similar. With Paul's Death Fist, if he does it very close, Nina can get a reverse ivory cutter. But at most ranges, if he gets it to hit like non-clean or well-spaced, then your reverse ivory cutter will whiff or it'll get blocked. Generally it'll whiff, sorry. It's the same with Nina's forward 3. And of course, against Paul, she can just do a forward 1 plus 2 and it'll consistently reach Paul. But with her bad habit, you've really got to choose, you've got to figure out who you're versing and what you can do. So close up, for example, Nina can get her 14 frame punishes because it's minus 14. But if we go a bit further back, now it won't reach. And it means that she's got nothing consistently that will punish it, because even forward 2, you can't get to come out fast enough. You can't get anything that's going to reach. So you can make this safe in a lot of matchups. But let's think of what matchups we have that might not be the case. So if we go through some characters and just think of ones that have good 14 frame punishes. Let's just go 14 frame launches, okay? So like Brian's Jet Upper is going to be very hard to reach. Yugif is going to be very hard to space to punish this. Once again, Yugif, Whiff. Josie's forward 1 plus 2 with Rage will work pretty well. He's got an extra frame for the Yugif, so he could probably do it. Lars forward back 2-1 is pretty consistent, I believe, and Lilith's 3 plus 4 as well. You gotta be careful with those. Paul's back 3, not even close, obviously. Steve's Sonic Fang is going to be a consistent punish, so this is a move you don't really want to use against that. I know we're talking about combos. Lily's 3, Zhao Yu's 3 will probably work pretty well. Yoshi's Rage Drive will probably launch it. Akuma, I don't think he'll really have the range. Geese's back 3 won't work. Noctis is 15 frames, down from 2. Armor King, it's the same as the mission is, so yeah. Julia can forward 3. I don't know how well that's going to work either though, so she's probably better doing like a forward 1, so she doesn't get a great deal. Gunryu, I reckon it's going to be tough too. Far from him, I don't know, who cares, he'll get lots of damage. Okay, so you just got to choose your matchups on who to use this against and the situations. Like I said with Yoshi's Rage Drive, so you'll be using this less if the Yoshi's in Rage. But otherwise, it's like many other tools where you can sort of establish the movement of the opponent, and if you think they're going to approach, regardless of how they're going to approach, it's a quick mid. Obviously it doesn't have any evasion, but just the fact that if you can get it on hit, you're +8, and you may not be at your optimal range, but you're at a good range for Nina, where you can do things to sort of get in, or at least push them to the wall. Once again, it's too far away to get anything sort of guaranteed or any amazing mix-up on them, because they can just backdash anything too scary. But at least it's still +8, it's in a good position, so you can do things there. And then of course on counter hits, as I showed before, and dropped just then, you've got so many different options for combos, that if you get this on counter hit with Nina, you've pretty much got them to the wall. And a lot of damage. So if you space this well, the spacing doesn't matter for the combo. So regardless of the spacing, you're still going to get good combos. And if you're unsure of the combos, you can always just run up and do something like that. So I really use it. I use it as a pseudo approach tool. It's not getting me into that range I want, but it's giving me an opportunity to start my pressure, and it's also giving the opponent an opportunity where you can test their knowledge, because they might go, oh, that's -14, and try and punish it, and fail, because it doesn't have the same sort of spacing as like a Blonde Bomb, which kind of auto spaces. Where you can see there, that's much easier to punish. Well, that, depending on the range, it's difficult. It can be difficult, at least for some characters. Not law. Yeah, so that's how I'd use it there. But like I said, there's not really much point in using it after a combo. Like, you wouldn't really use it to end a combo, or even if you get it. Not in this Tekken. In previous Tekkens, it was higher damage than Blonde Bomb. Yeah, oh my god, I can't do it. You'd do things like that, but you'd get more damage by doing a forward 3 opposed to a Blonde Bomb, but now you don't, so it's kind of irrelevant as a combo ender now, unless you're at a wall, which I'll talk about in a moment, but that's very, very minor detail, very irrelevant still most of the time. So, OTG, that's what I talked about before. So if you get any kind of knockdown, it's a go-to tool to use in conjunction with something like a down 2. Okay, probably the easiest situation to talk about is the Skull Splitter, which I did a video on recently. So, okay, let's actually record the AI, because then we can look at this in a better light. Oh god, I can't even launch into chat. So I wake up backwards, and suddenly I can't reach, okay? So it arguably becomes safe in a lot of matchups depending on what they do. Obviously if they tap up, like I did just then, and then a lot of characters can punish it, but even then it's not at the closest range. And then if I do anything else, like if I do a get up kick, I get counter hit launched. So it's kind of tricky in that regard, and I don't think people often consider the strength of it there, because they can't just lay down. If they do anything except tap up, they can't even punish it for a lot of the cast. Yeah, so it's an interesting one for that regard. It's because of that spacing. So having the variable spacing is a very strong tool for this, and it makes it great for Oki. I also mentioned before about things like the side spike. Yeah, it's not working. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, we'll just do one. So it's an easy option to catch there, and like you just saw, depending on how they get up, it can actually get them backwards. You're not really in a good, even though you're +8, you're not in a position where you're going to get anything guaranteed, but it's still it's another one of those situations where the opponent's going to be like, oh no, I'm back turn, what do I do? So they'll try and get front turned as quickly as possible, unless there's someone like Ling, or Lei, I guess. So it just adds an extra layer of complexity there. If they do an attack, you counter launch them. If they don't just stand up normally, sorry, in that situation it's guaranteed. But if they do stand up normally, then you get them back turned. And if they just stay grounded, you knock them back and you're still pushing them toward the wall. So it's a very strong tool to use in that situation, especially as it's guaranteed. But in other Oki situations, it's just great because of that spacing that it causes. And then, of course, things like spring attack. It beats spring attack. So it's almost a move that covers all bases in a lot of Oki situations. And it's not only those situations, you could do it off something like an up 4-3. Like I said, any sort of knockdown, the timing will be different, and it's still going to have its weaknesses, but I mean, you can delay it. You can do sort of a deep dash delay, and you can make it so it'll catch them in different ways. So it's very versatile, even though it's linear. And it's just threatening because it hits on the ground, so it really encourages the opponent to get up quicker, which of course is then when you can throw out more threatening mix-ups, or you can use it to make the opponent afraid of ducking, I guess, which is then when you can start really laying on the momentum with your lows. Or you can do it the opposite because it's risky, so you could pressure the opponent with lots of lows, and then once they think they've got a read on lows, you can start doing things like forward 3, which, because of the spacing, once again, can be quite strong to use. Yeah. OTG is really the greatest strength in this move, I think. So that's where I'd use it. The main scenario I'd use it is approaching, or sort of as a timing base, trying to get them on the tip of their buttons, sort of punish, or I'd use it as OTG. And yeah, very, very often I mix it up with things like a down 2, which I've gone on many times before about how great I think down 2 is as a tool for Nina. I know I'm going to be missing something key here, but let's go on to another stage. We'll go on to another stage. I'll talk about the small variance in the wall hit, and then let's quickly look at lore. Because Law is definitely the most threatening character in this situation. Well, for this tool. Okay, so let's say we do our wall hit like this. So let's do the Blondon one. The last hit's 60% scaled, so it does 53 damage. That's the same. The only difference here, see how I'm 1.6? I'm a different position once again. So it pushes you back so that you're in a different position. With that in mind, you can mix up your Oki. One strength that people aren't going to like is if we do something like this into that, if they do, depending on the option they do and depending on the character, you'll get a wall splat with that. I think it's the lows most consistent, yeah. But if we do, it won't. Because you're further away, you'll not get a splat with that ever. And also, as well as the damage being the same, you can see, actually I know the best way to demonstrate this, mid kick. If we do this, you'll see a 19 frame move trades. Right? Likewise here. So you're the exact same frame advantage, the only difference is the spacing. So because your spacing is different, you can do small differences, but it's not significant enough in my opinion. So you could do like a backdash. And that's about it really. So if you compare it to, I can't backdash away from that. So that's the greatest difference in this situation, is you can backdash away from the buttons. So you could use it against an aggressive opponent if they know they're going to do something. And I believe spring kick's the same scenario. So if you backdash there, you're only plus 15. So you can see there's a 4-frame difference there. So in that situation, I mean, you'd rather use the blonde bomb, wouldn't you? You'd rather get the damage. You compare it to something like this. Yeah. So you can see you got the midpoints there. 2-frame difference in the spacing. But the up 3 actually leaves you at a better frame advantage. So you can see +1 opposed to -4. Yeah, so I don't think there's a drastic difference in the use of these moves. It's just good to be aware of that difference with the spacing because it doesn't auto-space and it pushes you. I guess it does auto-space in this scenario, doesn't it? But its spacing is dependent on how the move hits opposed to it just hitting sort of thing. Even though it's only got 1 active frame, the hitbox appears to be quite large. So you can connect it with different parts of the hitbox to get that sweet spot. Okay, so now let's just have a quick look at lore. Oh, we're going to do the other way around, sorry. So if we use lore, this is the real reason why I say this is not a move to be used at all against lore, or use it very sparingly. Don't rule it out. Don't let an opponent or a character negate your move set unless they give you a reason to. But you're not going to find a range where he cannot launch it. So that move just kills Nina's use of that move. And then if we go to someone like Lars, I think Lars' one is a bit more range specific. Oops. But it'll still be... Yeah, there we go. So Lars is pretty good. Very good, actually. But Laws is just a level above. You're not going to make Laws whiff, so you need to be very careful. And I mean, other characters have good 14-frame punishes too that don't launch. Like, this is obviously not the same thing, but you could have a character that does something like that. You know, and they get a wall splat. They might have a good reaching wall splat. And that's a lot of damage still, so that makes it risky too. Obviously, but it's not a move you'd really be using against the wall anyway. Okay, let's get this less cluttered. Let's change the characters to Nina and let's go to the summary. Nina's bad habit, or forward 3, is a move she's had for a very long time. It's quite iconic with a lot of players. A lot of people who are just casual with the game will remember this move, and I guess when they think of the character Nina, they'll talk about this move. You know, ha ha ha, I like the move where she kicks them in the crotch, that sort of thing. But in the game itself, it's a 15-frame mid, which comes out at 16 frame at the fastest because of it being a forward input. It leaves you at +8, even though the pushback, and it does a good amount of damage. On counter hit, it's a full launcher. The greatest strengths of this move, in my opinion, are that it hits on the ground, it counter hit launches, and the spacing is variable, meaning that unless you're versing someone like Law or some characters in Rage, you can actually make it so it's very hard for them to punish. And you can even have situations where they'll go for a punish that they may have labbed, but because the spacing is slightly different, it won't work. And in many situations this means the person may not even attempt to punish, they may just take it as frame advantage, even though you're at -14. The greatest weaknesses of this move, yes, of course, that it's -14, so it's very risky, especially against characters with 14-frame launches, depending on the spacing, and also that it's very linear. So, because it's linear, you want to be careful if your opponent's stepping. but at the same time, the punishment, like I said before, because of the variable spacing, it can be to your advantage in some ways. I quite like using this move as Oki, and unfortunately, as regards to a combo ender, it doesn't have much relevance now because the damage of this move and the damage of Bonbon is exactly the same. And so is the frame advantage. The only difference being at the wall, you have different spacing, which can give you slightly different opportunities. And I think that's worth keeping in mind, depending on what you want to do and the type of opponent you're versing. How do you guys use Nina's bad habit? I use it quite a bit actually, depending on the matchup, and even then I still use it in the bad matchups unless the opponent gives me a reason not to use it a lot of the time. So, yeah. I think it's a cool move. I think it has a lot of potential in the game, and I think that everyone should be using it as an OTG a lot of the time, especially because of the potential reward depending on what they do. Alright, please comment below how you use this move. Do you like it? And let me know what else you'd like to see in my videos. Thanks guys, I'll catch you all next time.
You win.
What's done is done.